Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Wednesday, June the 12th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, David Williams. He's produced the program. Let's get it going. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. Now, all of a sudden, I found myself following the T20 World Cup of cricket. Of all things, I admit I don't understand all of the rules, but I'm trying to. So yesterday, Canada took on world beater Pakistan and acquitted ourselves really quite well. Lost by 7 wickets, but I was reading a blogger who's covering the T20 World Cup of cricket, talking about just how good Canada looks and the caliber of play and getting some respect now on the international stage. So that's pretty cool. Next up, India. So it doesn't get any easier for Canada. Okay. The PWHL season has officially come to an end now, with the awards being handed out for the Women's Professional Hockey League. Undoubtedly a success. And so Natalie Spooner won the Billie Jean King MVP award. She was the top scorer in the league last year. She scored 20 times, so top forward and MVP. On top of that, of course, someone from this province had a front row seat and spent a lot of time on Natalie Spooner's line, and that would be Maggie Connors. I think Canadians, by and large, are proud of our prowess in the sport of ice hockey, but enrollment numbers are down. And they've been trending down for a long time. And you imagine there's a couple of factors that contribute to that downward spiral. So, one thing, people are possibly more conscientious about physical sports and head contact and those types of things, but really it kind of boils down to cost. It's extremely expensive to get involved in organized hockey, which is a real crying shame. I mean, how many young people in the country, boys or girls, could really use a game of hockey, would love to participate, but the family simply cannot afford it? That's a crying shame. And there's things we can do about that. And in addition to that, the hockey season's so long. I mean, just think about it. I would imagine viewership wanes quite dramatically in the NHL. I mean, we're in the middle of June, and we're only 2 games into the Stanley Cup final. So it'd be a crying shame if all of a sudden hockey became less popular, just in my opinion. I know some of you probably couldn't care less about that. But for a lot of sporting fans in the country, you know, sitting down to watch Canada be on top of their game, men's and women's hockey, whether we talk about the junior, the under-18s, and, of course, the senior sides, but enrollment is down. And you heard Brian mention the Jays actually won a ball game yesterday, which was a good thing. But it was on this date in 1939 that the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum was dedicated in Cooperstown, New York. I'd love to get there one of these days. And, of course, a couple of Canadians are in Cooperstown, Fergie Jenkins and Larry Walker. So there you go. All right, let's keep going. So, tourism season, and one of the areas that we do indeed promote is the downtown core of the city of St. John's. And if you want to take on tourism from any angle, the shortage of rental cars all the way up and down the line. But George Street has become, and at the downtown core, I hate to pick on George. I used to love going down and watch the bands, but I haven't been down in years. And you hear the stories far too frequently about the type of violence that's happening in the downtown. And it's not just downtown St. John's. Some of my bar and restaurant owner buddies get really quite upset when I speak to this, but it's a reality. They've been working towards some enhanced security. There's something called the Downtown Safety Coalition, members of the RNC, Downtown St. John's, the George Street Association, Destination St. John's, Hospitality NL, the provincial government, and the city itself. So they're talking about bringing in independent security, which is a good thing, but will that really do a whole lot with curbing violence? The so-called rent-a-cop, and not to be disparaging towards independent security, but for folks who are downtown willing to get out of hand and to lash out physically in whatever form or fashion, is the so-called rent-a-cop going to stop that? I don't know. Better lighting has certainly helped, and there's a if you see it reported kind of program that's in play. One of the complaints being made in the past was people would phone 911 or call the RNC directly and say, here's what I've seen. and consequently, not much happened. But apparently that's been improved upon as well. So it's a good thing. It's a crying shame if you have people come to the province, and whether or not they say, well, the place is kind of dirty and or the roads are bad, but if they have an unsafe experience, as they've been told, if you're looking to go out for a bit of nightlife and some live music, well, here's the spot for you in the city of St. John's, and then consequently, you know, what you see down there is not great sometimes. And it needs a clean up. And there are a ton of panhandlers, and apparently some of them are quite aggressive. So anything on that front, we're happy to talk about it. All right, news coming from Transportation Minister John Abbott regarding the Flanders. So we all know a fire broke out on the Flanders just about a month ago, but it looks like the Flanders will not be back on the tickle until maybe next year. Now, apparently the Veteran is at a dry dock, has almost completed its trial runs, so it can head back on the route. So there'll be 2 vessels servicing Fogo Island Change Islands, Farewell, and of course the run between the Cove and Bell Island. But I wonder for the folks on Fogo Island, when the Beaumont Hamel was sent over to complement the service, haven't heard much in the way of negative reaction to it. Don't know. I haven't been out there. I haven't talked to anyone in the region in quite a while. But the Flanders looks like it's out. And of course, that was built back in 1990 out at the Marystown shipyard. It's been fairly reliable versus the Veteran and the Legionnaire, but you want to take it on. Let's go. And surprised I haven't heard much in the way of reaction to the announcement coming from the provincial government regarding trying to protect the motoring public on the highways when we talk about moose. So they're doubling their brush cutting budget from $2 million to $4 million, and that's a good thing. And then $1 million to put in some 6 kilometers worth of fencing. So they've identified a hotspot that they think is important between West Salmon Line and St. Mary's Bay Highway. But there's other stretches of the road that are pretty notorious. We know the fencing's been pretty reliable out around Stephenville, so if you want to take that on, we can do it. All right, let's keep going. So it was remarkable to me. A fellow named David Brake called the show yesterday talking about the fact that the city of St. John's is entertaining some conversation based on an external study, and the council has rejected recommendations from staff about developing on wetlands. You know, I know there's a real push to build more and more housing, and permits from the city of St. John's are way up this year versus last year. But are we really seriously even considering building on wetlands? I mean, as a productive ecosystem and the home to a variety of species, even though there's a major story on the federal front about environmental policies and protections really curbing advancements, specifically in housing, we can take that on. But, I mean, on top of that, the wetlands do a great deal in trying to control the flow of water and the potential for flooding. So hopefully the city, and certainly the council, is now just going to stand back and just say out loud, we're going to do everything possible to protect the wetlands. And this is not about being a tree hugger. This is about the pragmatic possibility for wetlands to be developed and what that means for the potential for flooding. Because you can't stop water. It's going to go where it wants. But the wetlands are one of the real safeguards or guardrails that are in place. So it was remarkable to hear that even considered at the city level. And of course, here we are in this supply crunch for homes and told that we need to build 60,000 homes in this province in the next 6 years, 10,000 per year. A banner year is maybe 2,500. We didn't build 1,000. There wasn't 1,000 building starts last year. And then you add in what is a complicating factor coming from the federal government. So, of course, they'll want to try to show that they're in the corner of young Canadians and potential first-time home buyers. And now it's become a reality that you're going to be able to possibly qualify for a 30-year mortgage amortization period. So an additional 5 years beyond the traditional lengthy one of 25. All right. So, of course, that's going to help. Then in the quest to build 4 million new homes in this country, I mean, we don't have the manpower to begin with. And these complications become very real. So the Canadian Renters' Bill of Rights, important. You want to protect renters from bad actors who are the landlords. But here's some of the strange things. So they're unable to, by legislation, mandate that the lenders, whether it be banks or fintechs or credit bureaus, to allow renters to opt in to have their payment history associated with their credit rating, and consequently probably make it easier to qualify for a mortgage. Now, the mortgage stress test and the amount of down payment required is way out of reach for many, so I'm sure that's why they're doing these things. They've also made it possible for people to borrow from their RRSPs. You always were allowed, but they've extended the time frame for you have to repay from 2 years to 4 years. So it all sounds, and I'm sure for people out there who are potential first-time home buyers, these are welcomed announcements. But will it have unintended consequences? We have a supply problem. right? Of course, people need a leg up when they're trying to get into their first home, the biggest piece of equity they'll ever have, even though we've changed our minds, our tune about what having a house actually means in this country. But if we have a supply problem, and supply has driven up the price of homes, it's driven up the cost of rent, and if we're going to make the demand side even more robust, will it indeed just spike prices even further? It kind of feels that way to me. I'm no expert in the field, but when we are short on supply, and we're talking about the need to build 4 million new homes, and we're just going to ramp up or amp up the demand side, not so sure this is the brightest move in the long term. For those of us who are in our own home, considering buying our own home, upsizing or downsizing. So anyway, you want to talk about that, we can do it. And of course, stick with the feds, and we can talk about every provincial issue under the sun. But the way the federal government is selling their proposal on capital gains is interesting. So it's made it through the House. The Conservatives eventually said they're going to vote against it. And the Liberals will use the old, pay your fair share as rich Canadians. But they're underselling. I think the numbers of people will be impacted by the change. So moving from 50% to two-thirds tax on capital gains achieved over the $250,000. So they say it'll impact some 0.13% of Canadians, those earning $1.4 million annually. But there's an awful lot of folks where their retirement is all wound up in these types of properties, whether it be a farm, whether it be doctors or some other professionals, accountants or what have you. It is going to make it more expensive for them. Now, I'm not saying that those who are well-to-do should not pay their share, but there is an argument that the well-to-do already pay their share. In this province, if we look at the top 5% of earners and how much tax they pay, but the Liberals, I think, are purposefully getting into positioning this as some sort of class warfare. Right? Further pitting the so-called poor or the poor-ish or the middle class versus the rich. Now, we can talk about those who are uber wealthy and a standard tax that can be applied to them. We can talk about the layer of corporate tax. We can talk about what someone might consider excess profits, but I don't know who gets to be the arbiter of declaring that you can only earn X amount of money as a corporation. But, maybe there's some purposeful moves made by, for instance, like the Canadian Medical Association. They're talking about how capital gains can impact the level of care. Now, it seems and sounds like a bit of a stretch. So is the implication that doctors who have their retirement wound up in something that, when upon selling or withdrawing from, will encounter this new capital gains proposal, is that really going to mean doctors are going to leave? Like, if so, that's terrible. But it also does absolutely feel like some of the cherry picking that goes on here, where all of a sudden we have to worry about healthcare because of capital gains. But I do think the Liberals are underselling how many individuals will be impacted by this increase from a 50% to two-thirds on your capital gains achievements. All right, sticking with the feds for a second. I think I'm more confused than ever on a variety of things. So you all hear me talk about the report that came last week from the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, NSICOP. So the allegations here, with no names being released, is that people were semi-witting or witting participants in the efforts of foreign states to interfere in our politics. Went on to say things like, it's particularly concerning behavior on behalf of some parliamentarians. And we've had the conversation about who should really, when we talk about the protection of democratic institutions as opposed to party over country, who should be getting a top-level security clearance. But Elizabeth May, Green Party leader, you can call her irrelevant if you see fit, but the fact of the matter is she did get the top-level security clearance, and so has the leader of the bloc working towards, and Mr. Singh at the NDP. So Elizabeth May read the unredacted report from NSICOP, and she's gone on to say that there is no list of MPs who have shown disloyalty to Canada. She says she's vastly relieved. But wait now, if the report and some of the comments we have seen about members of Parliament willfully, purposefully dealing with bad actors representing foreign governments and the sharing of information to the detriment of the country, which is it? There's nothing to see here, folks, or there is something here. We can't have politicians be the be-all and end-all to determine what next steps are here. This belongs at the Hogue Commission, the end. So Commissioner Hogue, Justice Hogue, should do her due diligence, read the unredacted report, and if there's any investigation required, let's do it. This can't be just left hanging as a grey area. We can't take one person or one politician's word for it on this one, whether it be the Prime Minister, Mr. Poilievre, Mr. Singh, at the Bloc, and or Elizabeth May. So let's just move on to next steps. This is important. Just think about it. We've seen what's gone on south of the border with the lack of faith in their electoral system. We can't have that creep into this country, regardless of who you support, regardless of what politician you plan on voting for, regardless of what leader is your preference. This is bigger than that. And so Elizabeth May's thoughts on this really contradict some of the things we've seen in the redacted report from NSICOP. But anyway, again, sometimes we just have to shelve our partisan leanings and get to the bottom of these things. This can't be apolitical, and I don't care who's implicated. If it's the Prime Minister or if it's notable members of any other party, past, present, I don't care. Let's just get at it. Let's clean this up. Let's have the Commissioner, Justice Hoke, have a look at this. If there's further law enforcement investigations, let's do it. If people need to be weeded out, let's do it, because I think that's bigger than some other issues that we deal with and some of the hyperbole and vitriol that gets flicked around. And on the federal front, not too surprised here, but David Brazel, former Tory leader, of course, he held the seat down in Conception Bay, East Bell Island for some 14 years. He's taken a run federally, running for the Conservatives in St. John's East. So when he left provincial politics, he said that it was to look after his own health. And he did leave the door open. You know, he didn't say, this is it for me, I'm never coming back. And so now he's coming back. He's going to take a run for the Conservatives in St. John's East. I think the formal announcement is happening this afternoon, I believe. So Mr. Brazel in the race. Okay, a couple of quick ones before we get to you. So you've heard me talk about this many times in the past. And it's the issue regarding loneliness, self-isolation, or being isolated and the impact on your overall health. And it's very real. You've heard me read some of the stats over the years. So there's a report titled Through the Looking Glass that was released by Support NL and Memorial University. Through the perspective or the lens of 184 visitors. Remember back to the lockdowns, the inability for folks to visit their loved ones in long-term care? It was a problem then, and we're understanding how big a problem it was now. So there's some key recommendations that have been brought forward. And, you know, it doesn't mean we're talking about pandemic-type restrictions in the future, because there could be all sorts of cold or flu or illness breakouts that might see some restrictions imposed in long-term care. It happened before the pandemic for a variety of reasons. So here's some of the recommendations, and these are important. Number one, always allow at least one visitor in long-term care facilities to support a resident's quality of life and permit alternative visitors to reduce the burden on the designated visitor, of course. And remember, care inside long-term care homes is not just by the healthcare professionals necessarily in the facilities. Families play an active role. Number two, prioritize socialization and connection between residents while minimizing restrictions on social activities. Number three, improve communication between staff members and residents in relation to policy and decisions that affect their physical and mental care. Number four, consider people's different needs and circumstances when developing policy, like cognitive or physical impairments, as an example. Number five, make methods of communication available to residents that they can use on their own or with help from support of staff and or visitors. The whole concept of loneliness, I never really fully understood how complicated it was and how meaningful it was for your overall mental well-being and your physical health. So let's see that these implementations, of course, and we're anticipating at some point, hopefully, the release of the review for long-term care and personal care homes here in the province. So if you want to take it on, we can do it. How are we doing on the telephone there, Dave? I wasn't watching my screen. All right, just a lighthearted one before we get to your calls. First held in 2008, today, Record Store Day. Independent record store owners brought this forward, you know, to talk about the retro that is going to play some vinyl, and it is really revved up. So we've got some great record stores here in this area. I don't know about around the province, but of course, you go down today and flick through the racks down at Fred's or at O'Brien, so it's Record Store Day. I think I'm going to pick up a couple of gently used vinyls today. All right, we're on Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. And if you didn't like what you heard off the top, or you want to pick up on what I laid down, or bring another topic of your choosing to the program, no topic is too big or too small. Let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're talking to you about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's begin this morning on line number 2. Good morning, Grant. You're on the air.
Hey, Paddy. How you doing today?
Doing great today. Thanks. How about you?
Oh, not too bad. Paddy, my brother was involved in an explosion back on May 8th, and he's currently in the ICU. He's in pretty rough shape. He's got 85% of his body burned. And my parents are staying out here from Clarnville, and they're staying at the hostel down there. It's costing them $45 a day, and it's pretty expensive for two seniors that don't work. So the reason I'm calling, Patty, is to see if there's any solution, or if you know anywhere that I can talk to about my parents, like how to get them rent and stuff like that.
Well, I'm not so sure what's out there that would be less expensive than $45 a day. Certainly no hotel room or Airbnb or anything like that. The hostel is probably the best cost-effective opportunity for people to stay when they have a loved one in hospital. So are you wondering whether or not there's anyone out there willing to take them in? Is that what you're asking?
Well, it's not that. I'm wondering if there's like any kind of funding that is able to help them out. Like, you know what I mean? They called the MHA in Clarenville, and he said there is currently nothing available to help with funding, because the government funds some people, right? But they say they're not available for it.
Yeah, inside the world of medical assistance travel, I don't know if there's an accommodation for someone to be the loved one. I think there's possibilities for if and when we have a child involved, but I honestly don't know. So I tell you what I can do is I'll have a closer look at the MTAP program, but I don't think your parents will qualify for it. And if anyone out there has any ideas that can help Grant, because yes, at some stage, even if it sounds cost-effective at $45, but an extended stay for folks who are on a fixed income is obviously problematic. Before I try to... I'm sorry, go ahead, Grant.
My brother is definitely going to be in there for over a year. He has over... They want to get him in for 52 surgeries this year alone, just on his burns. So they are going to be here for an extremely amount of time, right?
So their plan is to stay here for the entire hospital stay?
Well, like... My mom won't leave until he's in the clear, like, you know, like, because anything could happen with him at any moment. Like, he is on critical condition.
I'm really sorry to hear this.
No, that's all good. But, yeah, he wasn't expected to make it past the first 36 to 48 hours, and he's been here for 5 weeks now. So my mom don't want to leave just in case something goes bad.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to have to rely on the listeners to either give me some suggestions or point me in the right direction, and or if there's some way for, you know, sharing some household duties for someone who may indeed be living alone and understands the circumstances that your family's dealing with. So I'll leave that to the listeners if anyone would like to offer some comfort or suggestions or some sort of assistance. And when they do, Grant, we have your number. If I can get any good news for you and your family, we'll connect with you ASAP.
Okay, okay, thank you.
I wish you and your family well.
Thank you, Thomas.
Okay, Grant, you're welcome. Bye-bye. Yeah, so does anybody know what could be done on that front? I don't think MTAP is going to be a program they can avail of necessarily on this front, so if you've got some suggestions, then please bring them forward. Let's go to line number 3. Mike, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Patty.
Good morning.
Patty, I was waiting yesterday and I never got on, but then the general came on. He re-emphasized that, what my topic was going to be. You had a caller last week on about the parking into the hospital areas. Well, I don't know where the money goes to that goes into those meters and that and stuff, and how cheap it is. Like people talk about it's cheap parking, and you can get these passes and that or whatever. But the thing is that whatever money comes in there, we don't know where the money goes to. Paladin is in there as the security. Paladin is owned by the Compass Group. The Compass Group owns Paladin. Paladin Group of companies owns Concord, who's doing the management. So Compass is doing the management. Paladin is doing security. Concord is doing planning and that or whatever, or managing. And then when the money goes into the meters, nobody knows where it goes to. Now, with the Compass Group of companies, what happens when they get these contracts, all the money that's collected from these places, like the restaurants and cafeterias and whatever, all goes into the Compass's bank account. So here, like when a person goes into the hospitals, you go into the parking, Compass makes money. You dirty the floor, Compass makes money. You use linen, Compass makes money. You do anything whatsoever. You eat in the cafeterias, the Compass makes money. You use the equipment and that and stuff, the new equipment that they're making money on. Everything that's done in healthcare now is all there to make money for the Compass Group as regards to the infrastructure. And they're getting into that if they're left alone, they'll be running, the nurses will be working for Compass, the doctors will be working for Compass, and everybody will.
I don't know. I don't think that's the case, to be honest with you.
Not yet, but it will happen,
No,
guaranteed,
so.
because that's happening in other countries. But anyway, the Auditor General then came on there. She will not look at the Compass contract alone. She said so. And I must say, Patty, you asked her good questions, but she skirted around a lot of the answers and never really came out and said to it. But she did mention a fraud. And there's fraud there. There's inside trading. The Compass Group are in there. They know where the government is going to spend money to. And they're coming up with suggestions for them to spend money. And they're listening to the Compass as they go to spend the money. But then the Compass is using that information to give it to all their own companies. And we don't know which companies are Compass companies or not, because, like I said, there's one corporation going to another corporation to another corporation. But the thing is that she knows that this is wrong. The people's rights have been taken away for hiring practices. It's no worse than government dealing in communism as regards to giving contractors all of these contracts whichever way that they want it. And this Auditor General, the way that she came around yesterday, I don't know if she's fit for the job, or the job is not fit to be filled by anybody because the government is not paying any attention to them.
I think Denise Hanrahan does a good job.
Pardon?
I think Denise Hanrahan does a fine job.
But there's nobody listening to her or nothing else. And then she's not going to review the Compass Group. If she had done something with this Compass Group, and I told them whatever, put in complaints and that stuff about them, even before she got there. But she never followed up onto it after she got there. And nobody is paying attention to her. They're not following her recommendations. And so either his position is no good, or the staff. I don't understand what's going on there, because she should have the power. If she believes that there's fraud there and it's criminal activity, then she should be calling in the police. There should be a big investigation. But she's not doing it. And she's not going to look into the Compass contract alone, and I don't know why.
I don't think she said that definitively, to be honest.
No, that's what I said. She skirted around the questions, but she left that opinion. She never came right out and said so, but she did say, no, she's not looking at the Compass Group alone. She's looking at all the contracts. But this Compass contract needs to be looked at alone. This is costing us $1 billion.
Okay.
Of our health care money.
Final thoughts, Mike, before I go.
Well, the thing is that I think there's a lot more questions to be answered into all of this. And the politicians are running the show. And why are the competition running the show? How much are the Compass Group paying the Liberal government to get away with what they're doing? Somebody's got to be bribed. There's got to be criminal activity somewhere for her to explain what's going on, because these people are not stupid. Or if they are, they're to be doing this for the reputations and everything else of the people that are in there. There's a high price to pay for putting up with the Compass Group that is a bunch of people over in England and around the world making $1 billion out of Newfoundland.
Yeah, which is, I've never been able to confirm some of those numbers that you talk about, Mike. I mean, just never. I can't see them in the estimates. I can't find them in any budget. Of course, we'd all like to see some of these contracts, period. But I can never get anywhere near qualifying your $1 billion that you throw around all the time.
What I'm talking about $1 billion is that over the years, I had several contracts that were worth of the contracts. The contracts came out at $300 million. And over the years and that stuff, I know with the rebates that are getting back, which rebates should be illegal, it's the same thing as kickbacks.
Okay.
All of this stuff there with the prices. So if you look at the contracts, but there you got to read the contracts and see what's in there. like they get a percentage of all spending of the government. That's written into the contract. So how much is it? I can't get the exact numbers either, and an estimate. But they are there, and I don't think there's anybody other than, and I don't even know if the Compass Group, where you got so many companies, knows how much money that they're taking in Newfoundland, and for nothing that we could be doing.
Okay.
On our own, right?
Appreciate the time, Mike. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Okay,
bye. Inside the world of some of these private healthcare contracts, people will focus on the travel nurses, and fair enough. There's an exorbitant amount of money going out the door. And on that front, with the telemedicine contract that was let to Teladoc, there were local options that I'm not so sure how they fell so far short, even though their price point was much lower than Teladoc. But one important factor in there that we're still trying to get confirmed or confirmation is about the sharing of personal information. In other telemedicine services, we have seen that it has happened. When you have an appointment, some of your medical history may indeed be sold to other companies. So all of a sudden, if you had issues regarding your arthritis, next thing you know, they have targeted advertisement for some of the arthritis remedies that would be aimed right at you. So that type of stuff, the protection of our own personal information, especially when we're talking about our finances and or our personal health, the contracts have to be super tight, so that there's a huge penalty to pay when and if any of that information is shared with any third party. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Irene, you're on the air. Line number 2, Irene, you're on the air.
Hi. Patty?
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the gentleman that called in about his parents from Clarenville who are staying at the hostel, $45 a night.
That's right.
There should be a social worker assigned to their son's case. So they could probably check with her, because sometimes they know of people who offer short-term or short stays when people are in hospital and what have you. So that they may have some help that they could give them in that area.
Is that something that happens? People who are parents or loved ones of folks in the hospital get assigned a social worker?
Yes, usually.
Really? I didn't know.
And sometimes those social workers, know of people who would take in clients probably for a couple of days or a couple of weeks or what have you,
Right.
The price may be about the same, or might be a little bit less, or maybe a little bit higher. But it'd be worth looking into. There should be somebody assigned to his case.
Yeah, and I would hope that if that's something that's available, that folks who are like the patient navigators and or the professionals on the ward would make those arrangements on behalf of Grant's family. But we'll put that information in his ear and see if that can help.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's hope so. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome, Irene. Thanks for the call.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And of course, yes, there's the possibility that folks can fundraise, whether it be a GoFundMe or whatnot. But of course, the GoFundMes sound like a good idea, but you also have to be wary of knowing what you're getting yourself into, because there's a pretty significant fee taken by the platform itself. So fair suggestion, and if Irene's on the right track here, where a social worker might be able to do something on behalf of the mom and dad, hopefully that could be the case. We'll get that information to Grant. Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 4 and say good morning to the Secretary of Happy City St. John's. That's Elizabeth Oliver. Elizabeth, you're on the air.
Hi.
Hi there.
I'm here to talk a little bit about a couple of events that we're having. Happy City is having this weekend. They are the final 2 walks in a series of 6 Jane's Walks. And I can tell you a little bit more about Jane's Walks afterwards. But on the Saturday, there is a walk starting at Fort Townsend, which is about some of the defensive history of the city of St. John's, focusing on the downtown area. And that starts at 12. And then on Sunday at 2 o'clock, we're another walk, which some of you will know that downtown St. John's is laced with little alleys and secret passageways, and it's actually possible to walk from the Georgestown area all the way down to Water Street, or actually right to the harbor, through these hidden paths. And we are starting at 2 o'clock on Sunday at the Georgetown, outside the Georgetown Bakery, and we're going to make our way downtown. It's a bit different from some of the other walks we've had in the past, because what we're going to be doing is following along a video of the walk that was done a couple of years ago by Grant Genova, an architect who unfortunately died a couple of years ago. And so we will be following along on that video, but there will be 3 people from Happy City who will be adding context, pointing out changes, and perhaps also just adding a little bit more information that's on the video.
Yeah, I actually went on one some years ago, and I know the pandemic meant for some virtual tours which weren't as great as the Jane's Walks can be. And you're right, there's all sorts of fascinating little historical tidbits that can make it much more interesting when you even just peruse the city on your own accord, as opposed to simply being involved in the Jane's Walk. And Jane's Walk, this is an international thing. These walks happen all over the world. And I believe the lady that it's in memory of is a lady named Jane Jacobs, right?
Yes. She was a urban theorist, activist, born in the States, but eventually ended up in Toronto, where one of the big things she did is that she led a group of people which stopped the Spadina Expressway, which was going to pretty much demolish a huge swath of Toronto.
Yeah, her big focus was to move away from our car-centric approach to urban development. Someone actually gave me a copy of her book. I'm pretty sure it's called The Death and Life of Great American Cities, or something along those lines.
Yeah, you're right, Death and Life of American Cities. I actually met her years ago.
Is that right? Where was that?
In Toronto. I was meeting someone outside, waiting for someone to come out of a building on the campus of U of T. And I'm sitting on a bench I'm interested in cities at that point, but I wouldn't really have gotten to the point of doing much reading or thinking about it. But I'm just gawking. And this woman approaches me, and she's wearing strange flowing clothes and huge spectacles. I thought, she looks like a giant bird. And she walked up to me and she said, "What are you looking at and what are you seeing?" And we had a whole 20-minute chat about the buildings at U of T and how people walked between them and how the spaces between them were used. And I just thought, well, that was interesting but weird. And then, several years later, I actually had decided to go back to school, and I'm doing urban geography. I pick up a book, one of her other books, and I flip over the back of it, and there's a picture of this woman. And I thought, oh my God, I met her.
That's interesting. I mean, the flowing garb that you described that she was wearing, she comes by that honestly. Jane Jacobs, I think, lived in Greenwich Village until she moved to Toronto. And I don't even know why I know these things. Someone sent it to me some years ago. So, Greenwich Village of the day, so she would have lived there up until the mid to late 60s. So that would have been a pretty common look for female residents of that part of New York.
Yes, it would have been exactly. I think the big difference between Jane and I'm basically in that a little bit younger than Jane Jacobs would have been, but not that much. We were colorful as well as wearing flowing things, and she stuck to pretty much black and gray. So she had her own style.
I love it. It's a nice addition to the... I'm sorry, go ahead.
And her own way of thinking about cities. I mean, she was belittled at the time because she had no formal training in urban studies. People would, sniff at her and say she's just a housewife. But now she's really regarded as kind of a seminal thinker in how we look at cities and how they ought to work. work today.
Yeah, because urban sprawl comes at a cost, and it does further exacerbate the reliance on your own personal vehicle and or public transportation, but not everyone's blessed with efficient public transportation. So walkable cities, close to amenities, makes life easier.
Yeah, and in some of the little paths and alleys that we'll be traversing on Sunday are very definitely old, narrow cart tracks paths, which just somehow got left behind as the city grew and changed.
It's great stuff. I'm sorry, I'll give you the final thoughts, Elizabeth. And before we go, give the folks the details about where they can hook up for this edition of Jane's Walk.
Okay, it's Saturday, 12 o'clock, lobby of Fort Townsend. Sunday, 2 o'clock, in front of the Georgetown Bakery, which is the corner of Hayward and Maxey.
And grab yourself a bagel, delicious product from the bakery.
Unfortunately, on Sunday they're closed.
Oh, it's Sunday, right, of course. Yeah. I would have always made a Saturday stop there while the kids were hopping on the ice for practice up at O'Hare Arena. It's good to have you on the show, Elizabeth. I enjoyed the call.
Okay, thanks.
Take good care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Elizabeth Oliver, Secretary at Happy City St. John's, talking about this year's editions of the Jane's Walks. I mean, they happen in hundreds of cities around the world. So that might be of interest to you. Let's go and take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 6. Roland, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for taking my call.
Happy to do it.
Thank you. Just calling in. My mother-in-law is a patient down at the Miller Center. The care is number one. The issue down there is they have no water for the patients to get a shower or to get a bath. The nurses have been telling us the parts are ordered and stuff. I'm just wondering if somebody in the healthcare, Mr. Osborne or somebody, are aware of what's going on and if they can do something to expedite the parts getting there to make the job for the nurses a lot easier than what it is.
So I'm sorry, Roland. What exactly is the problem with the water?
They're having issues with the water down there. They said they have no water for that part of the building that my mother-in-law's in. There's something to do with a pumper, and the parts are ordered. I guess with the building as a whole and that, and getting the parts is probably not as easy as running to the plumber shop somewhere and picking them up, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
But it would make the nurse's job a lot easier, because now they're boiling water in kettles and they're doing back to when we grew up as kids out around the bay. I mean, you boiled a kettle and stuff to get a wash in that, right? In this day and age, I think there should be something there where the parts should have been arriving a lot faster than they are, right?
Yeah, now I would imagine, given the extra workload for the staff and the problems that brings for administration, I would guess that they're trying to fix this situation ASAP for everybody's sake, most importantly for the patients.
Yes, according to the nurses that we've been talking to, the parts are ordered, and that's all, I guess, the information that they got, that the parts are ordered, right? But like you said, it would make their job a lot easier, because you couldn't ask for better people, right? They're number one.
Absolutely. I have friends that work at the Miller Center. As a matter of fact, one summer I worked in maintenance at the Miller Center, and it was old and a little bit decrepit then. So I can only imagine what it's like today. And now, of course, like you say, the types of services down there, whether it be with occupational therapists or physical therapists or the prosthetics lab, the Veterans Complex there, or Pavilion, whatever the right word is. So I will see if there's some sort of timeline that we can figure out about the repairs for the water system at the Miller Center. As soon as I get it, I'll talk about it on the show.
Okay, thank you.
Happy to do it, Roland. Good luck to your... it's your mother, right?
No, mother-in-law.
Your mother-in-law. How is she?
She's okay. She's having some issues and stuff, but she's 83 years old, right? And she's having some issues, but she's doing okay.
I'm glad to hear it. Pass along my best to her.
Okay.
Thanks, Roland.
Okay.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye. So someone saved me the typing of an email. So if you're listening from the Department of Health Community Services today or at NL Health Services, and you can help us understand a timeline for the resolution of the water problems at the Miller Centre, that would be great. So please send me that information when you can. Let's go to line number 1. Eugene, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you today?
Not too bad, thanks. You?
Good. Thank you for you and David and VOCM for taking my call. Paddy, the reason why I'm calling this morning, I want to thank the government for the good news on the $4 million for brush cutting and $1 million for fencing. That's good news, music to my ears, and I'm sure the public ears that likes to have that view of a moose when they see the moose before he's through the windshield, like it happened to me in 2002. So, as you know, that I've been lobbying this since my accident, and I've been on board with SOPAC since 2009 when we got formed, and we do have a couple of our committee members now deceased, and my condolences to the families, and they worked really hard to keep SOPAC going, and so I have offered to get on that committee again now, and I got a call to make now in a bit now because I'm here in St. John's now, and we got a meeting, I think, coming up in Claremont at the end of the month. And we'll stop back and try to get things moving again, our committee and that. But, Paddy, I've been saying, they're saying now 135,000 moose, and last year they were saying 110. Whether it is or not, I don't know. But, Paddy, since I had my moose accident, I should say, in 2002, if God should strike me dead, I've never heard talk of so many moose on the highway before. Now, I travel the highway a lot. I just seen 3 before I got to Port of Bass there a few days ago. My neighbour's seen 14 from Deer Lake to Lewisport. At the coffee shop in Lewisport at Tim Hortons, a guy there said he's seen 9 from Harbour Britain to the Trans-Canada. I've never seen so many moose before. Now, I know there's a group out there that wants to save moose's lives and not issue more licenses, and you know who I'm talking about. But I tell you, I want to protect the people. I want to save people's lives. And when I drove that highway the other day there by Southbrook and seen them headstones there on the bank where I've been lobbying to get the brush cut for a long time, I tell you, that really hurts. If we can get more brush cut, if we can get more fencing, and since this was announced, actually I emailed the minister because I've been emailing the minister on the issue, and I emailed him and thanked him, and he got back to me and said yes, the fencing is going to continue in the years to come, which is good news. We wants to hear that, and since they announced it, actually, I've had 2 areas that said they'd like to have brush cut, and I drove that area. I know it's serious. That's between Gander Bay and the Stoneville intersection, and another one is on the road to the Isles and Cobb's Arm. See, Paddy, when the brush is right next to the highway, and you know what I'm talking about, you haven't got a chance. I didn't have a chance. So we got to keep lobbying. The government got to keep this serious. I have Googled and I've checked into this, and we got more moose per kilometer than any other part of the world. And so it is a serious matter, and we have to continue with the brush cutting, and there's much brush that still needs to be cut. So we have to continue, and thank you to the government for issuing this money, and I just hope to God it can continue, because we haven't got an inch of fencing since 2012. And I just came out of Nova Scotia, Paddy, and the fencing, and New Brunswick, the fencing and the brush cutting, grub back, and now we got grass instead of trees. We got to take this seriously if we're going to keep the 135,000 moose in the province. I know it's important to have that many moose in the province for the hunters, yes, because I got brothers that been 4 years trying to get a license, and I know they should be issuing more licenses, and I don't know why they're not, but they're not. They're actually decreasing, and the population is increasing. That don't make sense to me when we got family members injured and killed, Paddy.
I agree, obviously, protecting the motoring public is important, and there's the whole ecosystem balance that is part of this conversation as well. I would suggest it's not just about getting me moose by type of stuff. Anyway, on that front, I think there's a variety of factors there. Now, when you talk about the brush clearing, we had a call yesterday about the state of the road out around St. Bride's, and it's disgraceful, it's deplorable, and there's parts there where you can scratch up your vehicle on the alders that are that close to the side of the road.
Yeah.
But even if we, couple in, you and I possibly disagree somewhat on this one, but speed obviously plays a factor here, time of day plays a factor. With the installation of some of the speed cameras, in addition to fencing, it might be also helpful that in the most notorious spots where we've seen moose vehicle collisions, is they would be prime spots for these speed cameras too, because it'll slow you down. It just will. People will get used to it, and of course they're not just going to be dangling from a tree or a light pole and you don't know they're there. Part of the legislation is quite clear. There has to be a sign warning you that you're entering into a speed camera zone. So I think a lot of those things working in conjunction can help. And just cutting back the brush. Yeah. I mean, when you prune a tree, it grows back quicker and stronger than it did before. So grubbing it out and putting the grass down makes all the sense in the world. Fully grub the land. Just don't chip off the end of the alders, because before you know it, and before the growing season's over, they're right back on the shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah, Paddy, I think you might have misunderstood me in the past, because we talked about speed, and maybe you got the idea that I think that speed is not important. My son, I tell you, speed is a major problem. I'm on the highway probably, besides the truckers, I'm probably on the highway. I spend more time in my vehicle than I do in my cottage. I tell you, speed is a major problem. There's people on the highway driving mad. I agree with you 100%. But there's guys like, hopefully, you and I, that have drives a bit sensible, and we can see that moose before he's through my windshield, before he's through your windshield. I didn't have a chance. By goobies, I was doing 90 kilometers an hour. The moose came out of the brush through my windshield, and I've been suffering ever since, and still suffering today. And we get people killed, and we have had 4 people killed in the last 2 years. I just hope that area where these headstones are in Southbrook, where now the brush is cut, and thank you again to the government, because I talked to the contractor, that brush is cut, and I seen it when I passed through there a few days ago. That should be fenced. That's a major area for moose, and we have had 3 people killed in that area. That's the hot spot, like you were saying. That's the hot spot, so they should be taken care of. But, Paddy, yes, I agree with you, my son. Speed is a major problem. People are driving mad. Like, instead of 100 or 110, they're doing 120 or 130. Yes, speed is a major problem. Paddy, I agree with you.
Appreciate the time. Thanks, Eugene.
Have a good one, brother.
You too.
I always appreciate you taking my call.
My pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, very quickly, just a scam alert from a listener who apparently she got taken advantage of last night. Okay. This person says, I was a victim of scammers last night. Through my Prime app on my phone, tried to rent a movie and was unable to cast it to my TV. So you can just mirror things from your phone or your iPad or whatever to your television if you have that type of smart TV. I was prompted through the app to call a number which was very convincing. I was sent several emails while on the line from Prime Billing Department, appearing to be very legit. I was informed Prime had updated all their servers and security. That's apparently why I couldn't cast on my TV. And all customers have to pay a one-time fee of $79.99. I think that means American, to allow for updates on your account. I was sent the link through my email to pay, which I did, and I'd like to think I'm aware of scammers, but they were actually controlling my TV, so I really thought they were Prime. She canceled all her cards, contacted the bank, but she wants people to be aware of this particular scam. You never know. I mean, it's worthwhile for us all to be very skeptical and cynical about those types of things, because around every digital corner is a potential scammer. Let's take a break for the news. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the Deputy Mayor of the City of St. John's. That's Sheila O'Leary. Deputy Mayor O'Leary.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning, Patty. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you fine.
Perfect. Listen, thanks for taking my call. Just wanted to call in. Great conversations as always. And I just wanted to pick up on some of your comments there about ecosystems, because, of course, we had a very hot debate last night, certainly about wetland delineation within the city of St. John's. And of course, that fits right into that concept there. So I know that council members heard loud and clear from the public that people are very concerned about ensuring that we are taking care of and managing properly our wetland systems within the city of St. John's. And So I just wanted to speak just a little bit to some of the conversation that happened last night, if you're interested, and I think your caller certainly would be, because I know it's been very, very topical the past few days in particular.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, just to give a little history. I mean, we've been working on this plan for some time at the city. The staff have been basically asked to look at this because we've had an ongoing history of conflict, with developers around areas that are wetlands. Are they wetlands or are they not? Can we develop here or can we not? And so this has been an ongoing debate for a very long time. It will continue to be, I'm sure, in perpetuity. But what we really wanted to do, and this kind of came out of 2017, I believe, was when it was kind of formalized, was ask staff to go and really try to delineate the systems appropriately so that we know where we really need to conserve, where we need to protect, and where people can develop. So we can be not only, good conservationists, right, because it's about flood mitigation, making sure people's basements and neighborhoods aren't flooded. But, of course, there are really, really essential biodiversity ecosystems that we need to manage and protect. And so it's a delicate balance there, but also being fair to developers so that it's very clear about where they can and cannot develop in the city. So it helps. I mean, it's always going to be ultimately a political decision at the end, because it comes to council for a vote. But for us to have very clear parameters within our envision plans to understand where we can do this. So, last night, basically, we had a motion that came forward. We heard loud and clear from a number of people in the public about concerns about what we were doing, and we needed to clarify. And Councillor Burton, certainly brought it in as our planning lead, and she did a great job explaining that, no, we're not eradicating, protection of wetlands. Actually, what we're doing is we're actually upping the protection, but we have to do it very well. And so we had a very, very healthy discussion at council last night, and we actually, I believe it was unanimous in terms of our vote to actually make sure that this goes to our Environment and Sustainability Experts panel, because that was the one step in the process that I certainly took issue with, was that these experts that we have called into the city, they were not engaged in this process in the latter stages. And that, for me, certainly was a huge issue, that it needed to go there. We need to do this, and we need to do it right. So the process is important. So now council has approved that this goes back, this discussion, the recommendation from staff, so that the Environment Committee can have a look at it. So, so I'm very, very pleased about the discussion. I'm super pleased that we heard loud and clear from the public about how important wetland delineation and protection is. And the conversation certainly will continue.
I'm not so sure I've ever heard a good argument for developing on a wetland.
Well, it goes right back to, for me, I've been on council since 2009, and I remember in the early days there was a very contentious development area that certainly the neighborhood up north of Penny Crescent were very, very cognizant of and very proactive on. And that was the Anglican Synod Wetland Marsh. It was an area that actually was kind of cut into with the Outer Ring Road, but it's an area just north of Penny Crescent that is deemed a wetland and a marsh, and had significance. And so we had an environmental advisory committee at that point in time in the early days that really struggled with this issue. And there was a back and forth with developers about whether or not this is a significant wetland or not. And of course, we didn't have the data. We didn't have all of the information that we needed to kind of back it up. So it was very messy in terms of communication. The neighborhood, the people were very concerned. It wasn't just environmentalists. We were talking about the liviers in the area were very concerned because they knew the impacts. because, as Councillor Davis has mentioned, they're the kidneys, wetlands are the kidneys of the city. They are so important that we preserve the wetlands, because this is where the sponge, where the water, gets held and it gets funneled, and all of the high areas, Kenmount Terrace, Waterford Valley, it comes down through there, through Galway. All of the areas all come downstream through different river systems down into the basin of downtown St. John's. And there's so many impacts along the way. So it's crucial. It's crucial that we do this right and really, come up with the best system that we can to protect them. So that Anglican Synod wetland marsh issue that certainly was in its early days and had a lot of conflict, that I believe was really the impetus to start this ball rolling. And I'm so pleased. I have to give a huge shout out to our staff, because they've been working diligently for years on this file. We are one of the only municipalities to actually do this, because most are kind of covered under provincial jurisdiction. And I'm really glad to see that we're getting out ahead of it, because we have had some past mistakes in this area. But we can get ahead of it. One of the things that I just had an opportunity to do was go to Calgary for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference, and they are starting to re-engineer their wetlands that they actually took out, because their river systems, of course, built upon the Bow and the Elbow River, are so crucial to their existence, and they're starting to make up for past mistakes as well. So it's really fascinating to see them putting back the wetlands. So, some interesting food for thought.
And you mentioned Kenmount Terrace, which, of course, I can see from where I'm sitting right now. So it's not just wetlands, especially in the hilly terrain. Deforestation is almost very similar to building over a wetland when we talk about flood protection.
Absolutely. And Patty, good thing that you mentioned that. I've been hammering the city manager and a couple of our staff. It's time for us to update our urban forest management plan, which is now outdated. You know me, I'm a tree hugger. We've had many conversations about this before. And so we've been doing really good projects. We've been applying for funding and stuff through Tree Canada. We're making application through FCM. There's a number of projects where we can access tree planting, in state trees in areas where we need them. And one of the issues for me personally, Patty, that I feel very passionate about is the issue of tree poverty. You will see that there's a discrepancy in neighborhoods around cities. So it's not just the city of St. John's. This is in general, where, some of the more affluent neighborhoods are heavily treed and beautiful and well protected and preserved and conserved, and other areas of the city where people are on the lower socioeconomic end of the scale who do not have that same kind of beautiful urban forest coverage, which is a benefit not only for flood mitigation, but for health, for beautification, mental health, all of the above, right? Carbon sequestration. These are things that we need to have in mixed use right across the city. So I'm really hopeful that now that I'm kind of pushing and getting the ball rolling on the urban forest management plan revisit, that we can start addressing some of those discrepancies throughout the neighborhoods of our city as well.
Well, the neighborhood that you and I grew up in, there was mandatory tree planting upon development. Same thing with the neighborhood I live in currently. Is, right through the easement, up and down the streets, in every street in that neighborhood, there are trees.
Absolutely. And I remember my dad out there planting them and being very strategic about where he planted them and everything else. It was fantastic. So, yes, we need to get back into more aggressive tree planting kind of planning, but also we have to be careful. And we can't just randomly set it out, obviously, because we know that we have infrastructure that we need to protect as well, too, in terms of water and sewage and things like that. So, it has to be done, and it has to be done well, as with everything, right? There has to be a proper process. But I can guarantee you, Patty, I am on this file. The urban forest management plan is something that I'm going to be all over, especially over the next year. And so I really want to thank you for bringing that forward, because that is a very big issue for, conservation and protection in neighborhoods everywhere. But let's make sure that it's a little bit more equitable, right?
Sheila, I'd be remiss not to bring up the most recent city budget here. And the fact that as a property taxpayer, I'm going to see a 13% increase. People can, I think, if we talk about needing to rotate inside our fleets, whether it be garbage or snow clearing or whatever the case may be, 13% in one fell swoop is a a real declaration of how the city is managing money, whether it be the amount of people working for the city, the rate of pay afforded to your employees, and just as a property taxpayer, what's your message to me? Because I'm really quite disgruntled with a 13% hike in 1 year.
Well, you know what? The bottom line, a lot of that, certainly water tax is something that goes directly into our drinking water. So that's one thing. But in terms of property tax increases, we haven't seen a tax increase for some time. And Patty, reverting back to exactly what you're talking about, cities are really struggling right now. It's not just the city of St. John's. It's cities and towns across the country are really struggling because we do not have the municipal growth framework, which the Federation of Canadian Municipalities is talking about and lobbying heavily to the federal government about. It's a very regressive system of having to rely solely on property tax and development fees in order for us to handle all the infrastructure needs that we have to do in the cities and in the towns. And so that is why we are seeing those kind of conflicts, those kind of situations. We have to have a balanced budget, and it's very, very concerning for all the municipalities. I was just with 3,000 members right across the country, and everybody's singing from the same choir. We need a new fiscal framework, because this one right now is not working for us. And that's the only tools that we have in order to maintain the services that people are demanding of us.
Does it ask for council to be more attentive to fleet rotation, though? Because, we need to keep updated equipment for garbage collection, snow clearing, ice management, what have you. But when I talk to people who are working in that field and do some logistics work, they talk about what's an acceptable turnover year over year. When we talk about preventative maintenance or getting out in front of it, so it's not huge replacement of these massive expensive vehicles in one fell swoop. So does that mean council needs to, and staff need to have a plan going forward for rotating inside the fleets? Because that's where the bulk of this problem came from.
Yeah, it certainly, and you know what, we do need to stay ahead of it. And actually, this was the discussion that we had this year, because we know that some of our fleet was aging out, and that we had to get ahead of it. And so this is what's coming in line right now, and that was a huge part of the discussion, because we have to. That's the core services. That is the core services that we need to provide, and we have to make sure that we have the proper vehicles. But we have to also do that all of these things. And when we talk about transit, and the kind of way that we deal with our Metrobus system, the commission. Electrification, how we're doing it with climate change adaptation, all of these things have to be worked in together, right? Because as we're starting to build, newer fleets and things like that, we have to look at different systems as well. But you're absolutely right. We do need to be more cognizant and right on it. And certainly that was why we certainly included that in this year's past budget. It was really important for us to get ahead of aging fleet. So that was certainly part of it. But, No, you go ahead, Patty.
Very last one, because I'm really late to go to the break, and this is very much an aside to the big municipal issues. But did you read Let It All Fall?
No, I did not. Let It All Fall. Oh, yes,
that's
I did.
Mike Heffernan.
Let It All Fall. Of course I did.
Yeah.
Of course I read it. It was, it's activism at its best. It's about grassroots culture and all the rest. I love it. Mike Heffernan, right? It's just a brilliant summation of taking things on in community and the roots of alternative music scene, right?
Yeah, it was a cool book, and I knew most of the people that were interviewed in it. So, and it was an interesting format that he chose as well. Sheila, appreciate the time. Thanks for this.
Oh, my gosh. Thanks, Patty, for having me on, and it's always great to talk to you. I don't get to talk enough, but thanks for all you're doing.
Take good care. All righty.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Sheila O'Leary, Deputy Mayor of the City of St. John's. Let's go ahead and take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Dave, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Not bad, thanks. You?
Not bad at all, sir.
Good.
Driving along this morning, and I heard one of your callers previously call in about a topic that I just had to, first of all, reach out to give a shout out and a thank you for what I heard. Was Mr. Eugene Nippard from the former SOPAC, and what I heard that he's probably looking at going back. Great thing. And I got to applaud the government for this $1 million for moose fencing, and I think it was $5 million for clearing.
It was $5 million total. They doubled the brush clearing from $2 to $4 million, and $1 million for the fencing. Then the 6-kilometer stretch.
Okay, yep. Good. Hats off to everybody, and in particular, I wanted to cite what we've noted with these moose fences here on the West Coast, where the very first one went in between White's Road, and Glens. When you heard the morning news years ago and you heard tell of a moose incident, a moose accident, your mind almost automatically went to, I'm pretty sure that was White's Road or Glens area. This is where the fences went in. We heard lots of those announcements many mornings throughout the year, and now you no longer hear them. You don't hear tell of moose accidents. I'm sure there have been a few, but not directly where the fences are. And one of Mr. Nippard's comments was that he was at this not only because of the accident and how it impacted him, but he was on a quest to save lives. Well, I can assure you, let me be the first to say, that your efforts already have saved lives. I'm convinced, I'm 100% sure, that the reduction in moose accidents in that area, somebody's life was definitely saved if had there been a continuation of the way things that were. One of these accidents would have taken a life. The moose fences work. They work very well. And we know that in an area where the clearing is too, that works. It gives you the sighting. It gives you the visual. My, I guess, suggestion or request of government would be to seriously continue this, because there are areas in our province where, like everywhere else, moose are, and the fences aren't, and the impacts and the accidents are quite prevalent. I'm pretty sure that the records will show that there are high areas where these incidents are happening, but there are no moose fences. It's something that has proven itself to save lives. And I don't know what price you'd put on a life or how much these fences cost, but to me, they're priceless, and the results are clear.
Well, I guess we have an idea. It's $1 million for 6 kilometers, so I guess that gives us some understanding of the cost and where they could or should be and how much fencing is required. I don't know. I'll leave that up to people who know more about it than me, but there are some notorious hotspots. Yes. And, you know, some of the arguments that we heard opposing fencing in years past was access to the outdoors. But, I mean, that's been handled in other places. Like, for instance, when we lived in Alberta, there was fences, like, for instance, around the golf course. The entire golf course was fenced in. Now, it does go to show you that not everything is perfect, especially when you have water close by, the roadways and what have you. So an animal can still get in and around the fence and in on the road, but it's certainly a great layer of protection versus no fence. And the issue about you won't be able to put your ATV or something into the bush, yeah, you can. The cattle gates. I mean, that's the go-to. You just put a cattle gate there, and the hoofed animal will not cross the cattle gate, but your ATV can, or you can walk across it. So there are arguments against it that I don't think really hold a lot of water. But insofar as cost goes, you're right. I mean, we can't assign a price tag to someone's life. I mean, and it's not just being killed. You can be seriously injured, and it can haunt you the rest of your days. So, yeah, if it's $1 million for 6 kilometers, will there be another expansion of the fencing in years to come? There was sort of alluded to, but no confirmation.
Well, I can assure you, should they take the initiative to do so, anybody who would be a naysayer against that expense, well, let's just say that if moose fences aren't perfect, they certainly work. They certainly reduce the possibilities of exactly that happening, or of severe injury or death. And what is done, I guess, basically, and thanks to Mr. Nippard and his efforts and his group's efforts, is to highlight the exposure and the awareness. I know for one myself, I traveled across the island over this past weekend. I saw several moose. Most of them were along the highway. I had gone off the highway to a couple of areas where I had to go meet with people. I think I saw one off of the highway. The bulk of what I saw was on the highway, and in total I probably saw 4 or 5. I got to tell you, simply put, it's an initiative that's worked in places like New Brunswick. Is it perfect? No. But it is something, and it is an effort to reduce everything. Then any life that's saved is well worth the effort, well worth the expense.
Fair enough, Dave. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. All right, before we get to the break, we'll get a traffic advisory on 6. John, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Hi, John.
I just heard Dave Callahan, and I'm going to pick up where he left off. I just drove across New Harbour Burns, and that is a training ground for tractor-trailer drivers. They're on the road, and they're doing probably about 5 kilometers an hour. and there's going to be a serious accident, yes.
Because of the slow-moving traffic? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
It can be a problem. I think excessive speed is probably a bigger problem, but you're right. You can come upon something that's moving quite slowly in a hurry and maybe not be fully aware of your surroundings. So fair enough. And why are they going so slow?
I don't know. But I think that our public highway shouldn't be a driving ground for tractor-trailer drivers or for schools.
Oh, so it's a training ground. Okay, that's what you meant. I apologize. I wasn't following along.
No. Anyway, buddy, that's all I got to say this morning.
I appreciate the time. Thanks for the call.
Okay, thanks, buddy.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, I'm not sure exactly what's coming up next, but there's some callers in the queue. We appreciate your patience. We'll be back to speak with you right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to a member of the VOCM News team. That's Brian Callahan. Brian, you're on the air.
Hello, Paddy. How are you doing?
Doing okay. Thanks. How about you?
Good. So, we just had a bit of quite a twist and a turn. Paddy, you may remember back in September of 2022, there were a couple of random home invasions in the city. One on Beaumont Street, one on Maunders Lane. The police had real concerns for this. They issued the warnings at the time because, we may hear of home invasions all the time. But sadly, if people know each other, it's chalked up to that, and we move on. That no concern for the public. These people knew each other. They're, they have something going on, and they're trying to settle it. This was a case where it was completely random. And in the first home invasion on Beaumont Street, a man was stabbed several times. He was told he was going to die by the suspect, and then they took off, the two people, and went to Maunders Lane in the East End, where they roughed up an 80 and 90-year-old couple who were known to a lot of people, but nonetheless, doesn't matter who they were. There were a couple of seniors in their home on a quiet Monday evening, and these guys burst in and robbed them and assaulted them and moved on. So, to the jigs and the reels, one of the gentlemen pleaded guilty, was given 5.5 years in prison, and he's serving that time now, and he was kind of the key witness because he would have been one of the two men on the stand during the trial for Jonathan Hurley, which began last week, was continuing this week until today, when Mr. Hurley, or his lawyer, stood up and said they're changing his plea from not guilty to guilty. Now, this is interesting because Mr. Haynes was the witness and the second suspect in this case who initially gave up Mr. Hurley, said everything, the recordings, the interviews were played in the trial this week, said Mr. Hurley was there, they did it all together. There's even video surveillance of the two of them at a gas station and other places together on that evening. But yet, this week in court, Mr. Haynes changed the story completely. He's incarcerated right now at Spring Hill. Said Mr. Hurley had nothing to do with it. No involvement, wasn't there, didn't have anything to do with it. And that kind of threw everybody for a loop. So that was the first twist this week. And there was kind of a knowing look around. Here's this gentleman was considered a bit player in this case. And lo and behold, he got 5 years. He's doing that time. But now, on the spot, he implicated Mr. Hurley, and this week he changed his complete testimony, said Mr. Hurley had nothing to do with it. But despite that, Paddy, today the defense stood up and said, I won't say thrown in the towel, but, the trial was ongoing, and now they've decided to stop the trial. I'm told he will plead guilty tomorrow at 10 a.m. in Supreme Court, and then they'll move to a sentencing date.
And then we move to an appeal.
Oh, my gosh. As we've seen, appeals can be exhausted and exhausting. So, who knows if there will be an appeal. The evidence here, I will say, and I'm not going to prejudge the judge's decision, but the evidence here is pretty, the video surveillance, the eyewitnesses, DNA, there's a lot of evidence piled up, which explains, a lot, the guilty plea today. And I apologize for my breath. I just walked up from Supreme Court to get away from the crowd so you could hear me.
If I remember correctly, and part of the story and the backlash at the time was that either one or both were very recently out on bail.
Yeah, in all these cases, it's not like they don't have prior convictions. And yes, that was true as well, that only recently had been released. And we've seen this in, sadly, some of the most atrocious and aggravating cases, recent sexual assaults. You can look at...
recent alleged murder?
Yes, recent alleged murder. The issue here is, Patty, is the bar is, I won't say it's lowered, but given the conditions at the pen, given the lack of room at the inn, if you will, judges openly opine and talk about how, some cases that might have gone to custody are now being, more filtered through to try to find ways and good release plans to get them in the community, because there's just no room down there. And the more packed it gets at the pin, the more volatile that place becomes, and we know it doesn't need any help in that category.
No, if I understand the numbers, some 60% of the inmate population at Her Majesty's is on remand, haven't been convicted of anything.
That's correct. Correct. That was the latest number, yeah.
Was there not a Jordan concern with this home invasion case?
Not so much this one. Yesterday, because this was September of 2022, and the Crown actually made quite a, in some of these cases, as they did in Hopkins, they tried to get to not so much a directed verdict, but, a speedy trial here because of the high-profile nature of it and the randomness of it, the seriousness of it. The police made no bones about this wasn't your typical home invasion. These were 2 in a row, randomly chosen, could have been you or me, didn't matter where you were living. It could have just happened to anyone. The police wanted to get that out there. But there wasn't any concern for Jordan there. The delays or, the back and forth has had a lot to do in this case with disclosure and the fact that there were 2 suspects tried in different trials.
Yeah, and, and when we talk about recently out on bail, I believe for one of them it was the day before.
Oh, yeah, it was less than, with Justin Haynes, he was the day before, it was a Sunday. Now, again, allegedly, I won't say allegedly, it's been proven that he was the lesser player in this, and that Mr. Hurley, I will say allegedly because the conviction hasn't formally been entered yet, but, sort of the ringleader to this, and Mr. Haynes had tagged along. But yes, no question, it was only 24 hours. It was actually less than 24 hours. It was lunchtime that day that he was released, and the next thing you know, he was involved in this at that night.
Yeah, and the fact that, we don't have a remand centre for the less than violent criminals who are going to be kept in behind bars, because there's a big plea. And look, I know the upcoming federal campaign is going to be pretty ugly, I think, and that's one of the issues that's being considered. I mean, we've even heard thoughts that possibly Mr. Poilievre would use the notwithstanding clause, first time ever federally, to deal with things exactly like this, bail conditions, mandatory sentences, those types of things. It's going to be fascinating, if not terrible. Brian, appreciate the update. Thanks for doing this.
No problem, Paddy. Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
So that's a bizarre turn of events there. And for the fellow who's all of a sudden sitting in a cell or wherever in the yard serving a 5-year sentence, and now, boy, oh boy. Let's go to line number 4 and say good morning to Rowan Sherlock, one of the local musicians. We've had Rowan on the show before talking about the lack of safety in the downtown core, and of course he's a musician. Good morning, Rowan. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Great, thanks. Great.
Welcome back to the show. So we know that there's been some money associated with the Downtown Safety Coalition and some insecurity brought in and some better lighting. Have you noticed a change?
I have. Myself and my bandmates have noticed a decent change over the past few months, especially recently in the summer months as the tourists have been kind of pouring into the George Street and downtown area. So some of the improvements that were made with the funding that was granted was there was an improved lighting situation on downtown, particularly on George Street area. So now that was one of the issues that you brought up initially, which we then brought to the table with the Safety Coalition meetings, and I had quoted you on them, and it seems to have worked. And they have installed better lighting on the streets, so now during the twilight and the dark hours of the night, the street's much more visible to the public. There's also seems to be a private security company who are stationed on George Street each night, and I'm down there probably between 2 to 5 nights a week myself performing. And they're down there and they patrol the George Street area, and they've got a white security vehicle as well that goes up and down George Street a good few times. And they are there to kind of help out and trying to prevent any kind of situations that are happening. And I know from kind of first-hand information that it has worked in the past where some situations have been stopped by this security company. I'm not sure who the security company actually is. I keep trying to look at the side of the car and I keep forgetting what the name is. And they have actually managed to stop things from happening and hold on to people until the RNC have arrived and have been arrested and stuff like that. So it does seem to have been working. It's been great. Now, I was reading the report that came out yesterday on a CBC article about how it has been working and all this stuff, and it has been. I can attest to that for sure. But there was one thing that popped up in the article about this See It. I think it was called the See It, Say It campaign.
Yeah.
which was being promoted by the RNC. Basically, like if you see something happening, make sure you report it to the RNC and all this stuff. And it was like it's a great idea, and it's kind of common sense to most people. You see something happening, you call the RNC, you make a report, and hopefully it'll be prevented and it'll be dealt with, which is fine. But I think they were saying that like $80,000 went towards this See It Say It campaign. Personally, I haven't heard anything about this since it happened. So I'm unsure about the update with that. The package just arrived at my front door. It all seems to have been working very well, but I'm just not sure about that certain part of it. And I know that Officer Cadigan had said on social media that was a big part of it, but I hope that maybe the RNC will make some sort of a statement about that, and we'll find out what more about it.
Sure, and the security company, just for information, is the Independent Security Services. That's the name of that company. And the quote from Constable Cadigan is, "We did see a growth in reporting, and as a result, we were able to detect some behaviours that were essentially provided with intervention." So I'm not 100% sure how to break that one down, but we will try to get some actual numbers and comparisons year over year. And the lighting thing just kind of made sense. I mean, people are much more likely to be willing to do something against the law when it's in the shadows versus in the bright spotlights, that street always needed to be lit up better anyway.
100%. And one of the other things that I did bring up as well, and unfortunately, it's not really something that can be tackled because it's not an illegal activity. As Superintendent Sharon Warren told me last year when I had a meeting with her, is the level of panhandling that's downtown nowadays. And I know that everybody can attest to this and agree to it, that it's like five times as much as what it was over the past couple of years. Like, you can't walk from one length of George Street to the other, or Water Street even for that fact, without being stopped probably 4 or 5 times before you get to your destination without being stopped and asked for handouts, asked for spare change, asked for a smoke or something like that. And it's crazy. It really is. And it's, it wouldn't be an issue if you were just being stopped and, asked politely or something like that. But when they get kind of pushy with you and make you feel uncomfortable, or they kind of get a bit snarky and snippy with you if you don't have anything, then that's a real deterrent for people to want to go downtown, especially if you've got any sort of social anxiety or anything like that. It's not comfortable at all. And but as Superintendent Warren said to me, that it's not illegal. Panhandling isn't illegal unless they're creating some sort of a danger, like they're wandering out on the road in front of traffic, and then it can be dealt with, and then that's a different crime. But it is something that needs to be addressed at some stage. I'm just not sure how it can be done.
Well, I'm not sure either. I mean, it is terrible to see so many people struggling mightily, taken to the role of panhandler. And I haven't been down George for quite a long time, but even, as you say, just walking down Duckworth or Water Street in the course of the business day, and some of the panhandlers are really quite aggressive. And for some people, that might be potentially scary interaction or altercation pending. So I don't know what could be done about it, but you're 100% right. It's a part of the conversation. I'm glad to know that you're having a better experience when you're down performing in the downtown core. Anything else you'd like to offer this morning, Rowan?
No, just my usual advice to people, anybody who's listening, if you are going down to George Street, just to be safe. Keep your eye on your stuff, especially for musicians. Keep an eye on your gear and your equipment and your handbags and all that stuff. That's common sense, especially for a main city area in anywhere in the world. And just make sure you're just let people know where you are, and just generally be safe. And if you are seeing anything, please do report to the RNC. I know people are saying, you report at the RNC and nothing's going to be done about it, but not reporting it, then definitely nothing will happen. So it's better to do something about it than not do it. But just in general, just be safe, and it's going to be a really good summer of what we've seen so far down there. Tourist season is truly upon us, and it's wonderful for all the venue owners and businesses and the musicians. So it's great, and we're going to have a wonderful summer, I think.
Hopefully so. Nice to have you on the show, Rowan. Thanks for doing it.
You too, Paddy. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Rowan Sherlock, of course, one of the voices at the onset of trying to talk about improved safety in the downtown core, because it can be really quite fun if you're looking for a bit of nightlife, whether you be as a local and or a visitor. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the programme. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the Liberal Member of Parliament, elected in and serving the folks of St. John's East. That's Joanne Thompson. Good morning, Joanne. You're on the air.
Thank you, and good morning, Patty. I'm delighted to have the chance to connect. I wanted to, this morning, to begin a conversation just to acknowledge that, the Chatter St. John's East and welcome, actually, Mr. Brazel to the race. I think he certainly has a wonderful record of serving the people of the province, but he's in the federal Conservative Party now, and I think it's important for all of us to ask the questions and explain to the people of this riding why he supports cutting the really essential programs that I'm particularly proud of: dental care, pharmacare, school lunch program, the housing programs, on and on and on. And he's now with a party that has voted against all of those solid, well-received programs. So we need to move beyond slogans. And listening to the conversations while I was in the queue, complex problems we're facing, and slogans and rhetoric are not the solution.
Fair enough, but I mean, voting against something is as much the optics of politics and the role of the opposition as it is a firm commitment or denial of certain public policy. I mean, the ones that you mentioned, we're not even really sure what Mr. Poilievre, if successful, is going to do with some of those programs. He's kind of stood on the sidelines a little bit and hasn't definitively said one way or the other. I mean, even just as recent as the capital gains vote, kind of just was silent on the issue until voting against it. So until the writ is dropped and people actually have to talk about exactly where they stand, as opposed to some of the rhyming rhetoric, which is getting some traction, though. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just like signs. Things like that can indeed be important when trying to gin up the base to get them out to vote. But on that front, so I guess by your comments here, you are planning on running again to hold your seat?
Oh yes, I've been nominated within the party, so I'm here and I'm dedicated to continuing the work.
So when we talk about leadership, because of course there'll be a lot of focus on the leaders. Even we don't vote for leaders, we vote for our own federal ridings. But on that front, I don't take polls all that serious as the snapshots in time that they are, but it's been repetitive. Poll after poll after poll shows the favourable numbers or lack thereof for your particular leader. Mr. Poilievre's numbers are much higher, and that plays a big role in federal politics. Your colleague, Mr. McDonald, even though he backtracked, kind of called for leadership review. Do you think that would be beneficial to the party with your overall hopes of being re-elected in however many seats across the country? Because the Prime Minister's numbers are woeful.
I mean, we are where we are with that, Patty. I can tell you I firmly stand behind the work that we've done. I think, if you look at the legislation in a very difficult parliament that this government has been able to move through, the supports for the province, the supports for my riding, it's been extraordinary. We have come out of a very difficult period of time. I know, we don't hear a lot about the whole lockdown and COVID-19, but it had a significant impact. And coming back from that with the extent of disruption for a global shutdown and then a global opening all at one time is incredibly significant, and people needed support. And I think, this government has done a phenomenal job of providing those supports and rolling out programs that are brave and ambitious. Look at the housing program as an example, and doing it again against a very difficult parliamentary time in history of process. But I think, you look at that and also look at the economics. The interest rates are coming down. Canada is where it needs to be to continue to grow our economy. And I think what we're not talking about here, Patty, is the reality of a climate crisis. And, look at Newfoundland and Labrador, where we are poised to lead in a green economy, and the work that's happening in the province to ensure that Newfoundland and Labrador is a leader, because we have what the world needs, and we're open to really move quickly to ensure that we're able to meet the timelines.
For better or worse, but the world
is not
also
talking about that. Sorry.
When the writ drops, I'll be sure to carefully examine where everybody stands on these issues. So, insofar as what the world wants, for better or worse, that also includes offshore oil. Now, when you talk about providing supports because of the pandemic pressures that were brought to bear. Inside a $535 billion federal budget, there's a couple of things that have gone absent. For instance, this is not a big headline grabber, but we used to talk about 1 in 5 Canadians are struggling with their mental health. Now we talk about 1 in 4. And a really positive program that I referred people to constantly was Wellness Together. It had a minute price tag, but it went by the wayside. So when we know the mental health issue is approaching crisis, if not already there, can you explain why these really beneficial, low-cost programs went away?
So what I can say to you, and I stay really close to this because obviously this is an area that's important to me. There's been significant amounts of money invested in mental health programs and, in health transfers. Provinces are also a big part of this. If a program shifts, there is another program that has stepped in to take the place. So I can tell you there is an absolute focus right now to roll out mental health programs. The funding has started in the province. There's 3 announcements. I don't think they've been public yet, to really start on the ground, strengthen access to mental health supports. It's critical. You can't separate any of the social challenges that we're having, and I was listening before I came on, around safety and drug use in a community. You can't separate that from housing, from mental health, from addiction supports. And so it's not a single program, Patty, that's going to make a huge difference. We have to build much more robust supports, and we have to do that with the province. The federal government has the money on the table, and then the provinces are able to adapt, which they need to do, adapt the program to their own provincial needs.
There's a few things. Like you talk about housing, the ambitious try to build 4 million homes, when I think even if we talk about the availability of skilled trades, is very ambitious. But there's a couple of concerns that I've spoken to, and I'll get your reaction. So there's 2 different pots. The Housing Accelerator Fund was about $4 billion. It's been refilled somewhat. The Canadian Housing Infrastructure Fund, which comes with some strings attached for cities with populations greater than 300,000. But the concept of the 30-year amortization for your mortgage, and then the ability to borrow from your RRSP, don't have to pay back until 4 years later versus 2 years later. So help for first-time home buyers sounds like it makes sense, and it's certainly attractive to that segment of voters. But we have a supply problem. May this not have the unintended consequence? When you have a supply problem and you ramp up demand, then the price of a home is already exorbitant to begin with. The price of rent is already over the top for many Canadians. So this seems to me that we might be creating a bigger problem than already exists. Your thought?
It's interesting, Patty. I'm in Finance Committee, and this was the conversation yesterday with the big 5 banks. And, it's worth listening to what they had to say. They actually gave the federal government credit for an ambitious program that's making a difference. And these are the banks saying this problem started in the 70s, and it's not a quick fix, but we have to be able, and I love to actually, when I heard the banks talk about housing along a continuum, I've said this for years, and we have to understand that to fix or to really create the solutions that we need, it has to be along a continuum. Social housing, it's market housing, and, Minister Fraser has put everything on the table, and it is a robust plan. And workforce is part of that plan. So supports for workers, supports in immigration. You can't just do one thing and solve a problem of this magnitude. You have to use an all-of-government approach. And I will say, Mr. Poilievre put his housing plan on the table, and it actually didn't make it out of question period. It was so weak. The government is working with municipalities. They bypassed in the Accelerator Fund provincial governments, territories, and went to the municipalities because you can't leave any of the layers of government outside of the supports. And so the municipalities were able to work agreements with the federal government in terms of funding transfers that aligned with the challenges and the concerns in their area. So by really engaging with all partners and community partners, you can't leave them out of this mix. Engaging with all partners, along a continuum is critical. And when you've got the big 5 banks saying this is a good program, I think we're on the right track.
A couple of things. So the banks are federally regulated, and there has been some pretty tight regulations, so we avoid things like the subprime mortgage crisis that hit the United States. But I would suggest the bank's thoughts on this. We should be very careful to give that much consideration, in my personal opinion. I mean, when we know they're all beating expectation, my fees are going up, and at the exact same time, supports for people to be able to borrow money is in the bank's best interest. Of course, I think it's a good idea. If they're going to have more people qualify for loans through via mortgages, what have you, why would they think it's a bad idea? So should we be cautious to give the banks any credence in this conversation?
I think the credence to the banks in the conversation, it's more around the analysis on projections. Remember, in the budget 2024, there was a big focus on open banking, which is really supports for what you're talking about. Also, in the committee yesterday, we began with the oversight and the supports that exist that ensure the banks are doing what indeed they need to do. So I agree, oversight is critical. That's part of, and I'm proud, it's part of this budget. It's a robust budget that really does touch on all the key areas that we need to ensure are in place to make sure that what you're talking about doesn't happen. And again, I'm going to go back and say that I'm being political here, but I'll go back to Mr. Poilievre and I'll go back to the questions for Mr. Brazel. Slogans are not going to deal with any of the things we're talking about now. This is robust policy that has to be that has to be able to meet the very real concerns of consumers, and has to be strong enough to move us where we are into the place where Canada needs to be able to move into this new economy that. And again, I'm back to climate here, but we have to be in a place that we can meet the needs of the coming generation, and housing is critical to how we're going to expand our workforce, how we're going to strengthen our country to be able to allow our children to have the lifestyle that we've enjoyed, and not leave them in a world, frankly, that is not sustainable for them, and housing that is just too expensive. So I'm proud of the work we've done. I think it needs to be all of government. We can't stop what we're doing, and frankly, from an opposition, we need to have more than slogans.
Yeah, and we'll find out where everybody stands on some of these issues as time goes on. There's so much I'd like to get to. Capital gains. You mentioned the things that the federal government has done for this province or other provinces, whether it be $10 daycare, dental care, pharmacare, the rate mitigation transfer. But on top of that, the province is considering suing the federal government. Your government has decided to extend the current equalisation formulas to 2029. Premier Fleury and others say it doesn't incorporate costs, simply the revenue side. So it's not in the courts yet, so we don't have to avoid the conversation. Would you be willing to advocate on the province's behalf to see an adjustment made to the equalisation formula? Because it's not fair. I mean, if we look at how resources are applied in the province of Quebec in particular, there is an unlevel playing field. Since 2008, when we became a have, the Maritimes got $45 billion, we got zero. Now we're going to get $217 million this fiscal year, but I guess the base question, would you be willing, as a representative of a federal riding in this province, be willing to advocate on our behalf for a change to that formula?
Patty, I always advocate for Newfoundland and Labrador.
On this one?
You just need to look on everything. You look at the funding that's come into this province in the last number of years. It's astounding. I mean, I made I took a very strong stand on Bay du Nord when that was a key issue, and I was just elected at that time. I have no problem taking a stand for the province. I will say, Newfoundland and Labrador in total transfers, it's $1.2 billion. I'm not saying that there isn't more that we need to do, always, but Newfoundland and Labrador has done very well with this Liberal government, and I would go out on a limb and say we have never received the extent of financial supports from any government that we have received as a province from this government. And, even with the transfers in the skills training, it's $1 billion transfer in 6 years. There's still $143 million on the table. It is critical that we strengthen the skill set of our workforce. Nobody is denying that. But I don't think it's the top up that's the gap right now. It's not a bad thing sometimes to look at a program and see how you need to adjust it and how you need to move forward with it. But that program hasn't been cut, and nor will it be cut. So
it has been
for the
cut,
province,
but it's been reduced. And I do have to get to
well,
the break.
it was the top up. So but we can argue about that. But it's nuanced. But the point is that when we meet with the minister regularly, the federal minister on this, it's a bit of a back and forth. That's politics, I'm understanding. But this is a strong program and an important program.
Fair enough. And I wish we had time to take for redfish. I've got such a long list that's always banging around my head. I appreciate your time. Thank you for calling.
No problem. Thanks, Patty.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, Joanne Thompson, Liberal member for St. John's East. Let's take a break. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one, speaking more to the Executive Director of the Eating Disorder Foundation of Newfoundland and Labrador, Paul Toomey. Paul, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you today?
Not too bad, thanks. How about you?
Not too bad at all. And as long as we don't see rain until 8:30 or 9:30 tonight, I'll be having a great day, because today we're going to start our drive-in bingo once again.
Sounds good. Give us the folks the details, the where, the whens, the whats.
Well, going back to the Jack Byrne Regional Sport and Entertainment Center, the parking lot there, our gates will open at 5:30. Bingo will start at 7. I believe it's 12 games we have. We'll give away $2,500 plus in prizes, and, of course, all of the funds that we generate from this bingo and for the remaining 3 that we have for the summer will go to support the programs and services that we offer to the families and individuals across this great province of ours who are dealing with an eating disorder in their family unit.
What, have you rejigged it at all? Because, for some people it was really quite popular when it was novel. Then I'm not so sure you had the type of success you were hoping for with the drive-in bingo. So has anything changed?
We're getting a good response from people now saying, look forward to having you back. We made a change last year, and we went to a monthly, the last Wednesday of the month as opposed to weekly. And that seemed to be the magic formula last year. The weekly was definitely too often. There's so many other things to do. As we all recall, we had a great summer last year, and we didn't draw the people that we thought. As a matter of fact, I was quite concerned up until the last night. You may recall that it was not going well, but it turned out to be a fairly successful year after all. And it's a great opportunity to create some awareness about the organization and still generate some revenue as well. So we're going to keep with the monthly one. The reason we're going tonight has more to do with the fact that the last Wednesday in May we got washed out, and so we rescheduled for tonight. So there'll be three more nights of bingo after this, and hopefully people will see their way clear to come out, have a night of fun, hopefully win some money, and support a great cause.
Fingers crossed. Wish you and the association or the foundation well, Paul. Thanks for this.
Yeah, Patty, just one other thing before I go. Last week, and I know you had some people on talking about the Canadian Federation of Independent Business called for the elimination of the retail sales tax on insurance. And obviously, the Eating Disorder Foundation is not only a charity that does that type of work, but we are considered a small business. And we don't pay a lot, but we do have 2 insurance policies that cost us between $300 and $400 a year, and just to translate that into the impact it has, having that money back translates into about 7 hours of counseling sessions in the run of a year. So it's a small amount of money, but it does mean a lot to small businesses such as ourselves.
Not insignificant whatsoever.
Yeah.
I appreciate the time. Fingers crossed for a successful run at the drive-in bingo, Paul.
Thanks, Patty. Very much appreciate it.
My pleasure. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, we went a little long with Joanne Thompson, so we're going to try to get back on schedule with the breaks. When we come back, we're going to talk about immigration with the City of St. John's, and Mike wants to talk about an upcoming rally. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the Ward 4 councillor here in the City of St. John's. This is Tom Davis. Tom, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
So a couple things. we had a couple of cleanups last week, which went really well in Baird Place and as well on the Vinicum Street Park, just around Lark Isle Academy. And tomorrow, First Light's doing a cleanup with the Rotary, as well. Mount Hope's doing another one in Kenmount Terrace. So anybody in Kenmount Terrace who wants to drop out, there's going to be a cleanup. They're going to meet at the church there at the corner of Kiwanis and Ladysmith. Along those lines, we want to remind people that they should only put their garbage out between 6 and 8. There's still a fair number of people in the city who don't have garbage bins for one reason or another, and so they have to cover their garbage now. But it's really important. We have people who are putting them out way too early, and then, of course, the birds and the animals are getting at the garbage, and that's exacerbating our litter problem. So we want to encourage people to don't put your garbage out too early. Make sure it's well covered so that we don't have garbage blown around.
And I would add to that, if you are a public or a private building and have garbage receptacles outside, maybe, just maybe, you should empty them out every now and then. Because I drove down a section of Elizabeth Avenue the other day, and you can tell that it was the crows and the gulls that got into the garbage can, and it was strewn all over the parking lot. So if you have a can, empty it.
100%. I mean, again, sometimes it's prevention of this stuff. I mean, you drive down the highway and you see 2 Tim Hortons coffee cups. Well, that's just people being idiots. But some of this accidental garbage is really easily preventable. And so I just call on residents to do their part to keep our city clean. You were speaking to Deputy Mayor O'Leary earlier, and she spoke about the wetlands thing. I don't want to get too much into it, but the big thing for me was when we looked at the metrics, I realized that there's 20 wetlands we used to protect that were by name to protect, and one of them is Yellow Marsh, which is across the street. That's all those wetlands between Southlands Community Center and Kenmount Community Center, and Kenmount Terrace. And those wouldn't be protected. As well, the Clow Valley wetlands, which were also named in the original 20, was also not protected. So for me, my big thing is, yes, we want to protect as many wetlands as we can. As as I said yesterday, they're the kidneys of the city. They filter the water. They're a home for wildlife. But for us, as we look at long-term climate change and heavy rain events, they're the sponges that soak up the water, that slow down the downstream impacts when you get into lower parts of the city, Rennies River area in particular. And so, protecting those is tantamount. So I'm really hoping that is paramount. And I'm hoping that we're going to, when the staff who work really hard on this, and I know it can be frustrating for staff, and I want to acknowledge how hard they worked on it and how frustrating it is sometimes, because some of this stuff is seemingly arbitrary. But for me, if the model doesn't protect what we want protected, then we need to adjust the model. And hopefully the experts panel is going to dive into it and make some good recommendations, and we'll get this passed as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's nary an argument available to me for developing on a wetland. I mean, we've even got some major projects being developed on well-known and understood floodplains, but beyond being very active and productive ecosystems, I think the key point you make there is about flood protection. And I would add to it, again, like I said to Deputy Mayor O'Leary, Kenmount Terrace and the hilly nature of it and the deforestation to allow for that subdivision, we've already heard the complications in the Baird subdivision. I would imagine in heavy rain events, this ain't helping either.
No, and you look at like a tree, for example, to your point, a mature tree can hold between 400 and 600 liters of water, and then it'll suck it up, and then it'll release it slowly. So every tree is precious, and, it's the other thing. I want to encourage residents. There are lots of us, myself included, who have mature maples, and I know you do too. And those little things, it's amazing. And I feel guilty weeding my gardens and throwing these things away. Well, I mean, let's connect the dots. If you know people who have mature garden trees in their garden, I mean, you know what? Maybe you can come and get a little sapling and plant it. Just make sure you take into account where the wires are. Make sure you take into account snow and being far enough back from the road. Do a bit of research on it. But, there's no reason to have to go spend a lot of money at a nursery to buy a tree. There are lots of people who've got surplus trees, and I'm sure someone somewhere around the province who can probably spot you a couple of trees, and that can help in the process too. I want to wade into the Kenmount Terrace School, not so much the school itself, but I did a environment day we read last Wednesday at Lark Hall Academy, and I was there for a breakfast earlier. That school is packed. The principal showed me around. The cafeteria's got children in it. The staff room's got children in it. Down in the basement, they've got partitions stuck up for classrooms. It's amazing how packed that is, and I'm really optimistic that Minister Studley and the different ministers and the team that we have at the province are going to realize the unrealizable, which would be building a school in a couple of years. But, Minister Studley was actually out with her young son picking up garbage on Saturday morning. So she cares about the community. And, but I have to say, I just want to echo what the parents are saying about the need for the Larry's Brook and Lark Hall. I'm actually going to be at Larry's Brook tonight with bouncy castles for a school leaving ceremony. So any parents who are there, come grab me and we can have a chat about some more. But the big thing for me is I love, yesterday with the wetlands thing, again with the Mount Terrace speeding, again with the schools, when the people get involved like they do, and they email and they show up and they come together as a voice. I just want to encourage that. That's what's been lost too much in our democracy. The fact that as politicians, we really do listen to the people and we care what they have to say, but we're not messiahs. And a lot of times you've got to raise your voice. You've got to encourage us to do more difficult things. And, that to me, yesterday with the wetlands thing, it was empowering to have so many different people. I mean, our inboxes were flooded with feedback, and it was just quite simple. To your point, we got to protect these wetlands. And I'm not so sure without that input, and the same thing with the school, and the same thing with the speeding up in Mount Terrace and other things around I'm not so sure that we'd get the results that the long-term best interests of the city and the province. So again, everybody listening, just be encouraged, be inspired by the Amandas and the different people who call into your show and who are leading Facebook groups. And, I'm sure everybody's got passionate things, go pick up garbage. It all makes a difference. And to me, if my time in politics can do just one thing, it's just to inspire more and more people to get involved directly, like I'm doing, but even more importantly, you can make a difference in your families, in your own health, in your own families, and in your own communities. And to me, that's the beautiful thing about democracy, is when we get involved. But people not voting and people not being engaged and people becoming, discouraged with the whole process. And, then ultimately the people who scream the loudest wins. Everybody needs to be part of the process.
Fair enough. I mean, the squeaky wheel kind of stuff is, it just doesn't bring enough people into the fold. Anything else, Tom, before we take another call?
I just want to quickly say something. I was honored to be at the Filipino-Canadian 126th Independence Day on Saturday morning, and they had me presenting things. In 2012, there was 500 Filipinos in Newfoundland and Labrador. Take a guess how many there are now.
I have no idea.
10,000.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. And those group of people are so grateful to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, to the different employers. They gave awards to a whole bunch of employers, including Eastern Newfoundland Health Services, but like Tim Hortons and Chancellor's Park and Mary Brown's. They gave awards to these individuals because they allowed them not only to get a job themselves, but then to create families here and bring their families here and grow their community. And they have businesses here. There's a number of Filipino-led businesses throughout the city. And I just think it was a beautiful thing. So I'm feeling really positive about our city and our province right now. So I just want to leave it on a very positive note and hope everybody has a great day. Enjoy this sunny day.
Appreciate the time. Thanks, Tom.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye. Before we get to the news, I see where there's going to be an upcoming rally. Line number 6. Mike, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Patty.
Good morning.
It's a beautiful, awesome day.
So far, so good. Can't wait to get out in it.
Yes, that's right, my friend. Patty, I just want to inform the public there's a rally going on at the Marystown Mall tomorrow at 11 to 6. It's being hosted by NL Protect, Brenda Lee Kitchen, from 11 to 6 at the Marystown Mall. And it's a rally, it's information sharing, there's open discussions, and it's all regarding the green energy, wind energy projects and stuff. And I should add it won't only be NL Protect there, Paddy. There are members from other groups that'll be there. And I guess I should mention this to the public too. First, when I started and got involved in this, there was probably 2 groups on Facebook. Well, we're up to about 10 groups now. We're exceeding the 5,000, 6,000 marks of members to various groups. And it just seems like it's growing and growing every day, and people are becoming aware that the destruction that has to happen for these wind energy projects is not worth the cost. And people are just starting to realize it, and the numbers are growing. I'm not just because I'm biased or anything else. And I ask the public to go on any.
Mike?
It's not propaganda, you know.
Okay. So when and where for the rally one more time? Because you kind of broke up a couple of times there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Paddy. I'm sorry. Tomorrow it's at the Marystown Mall from 11 to 6, and with Brenda Lee Kitchen for NL Protect. And I guess I should mention this too. These rallies will be conducted right across the island, right to Port of Bass in various locations, and they'll be announced as time goes on. And it's really informative. What can I say, Paddy? We're doing this to stop carbon emissions, and from every angle I looks at it, I can't see where we're going to reduce 1 ton. And I ask you maybe to bring Andrew Parsons on or Seamus O'Regan, and because the whole thing about this climate change is to stop global warming and reduce emissions. But I don't see anything out of these plans in any way, shape, or form, which is a target that we're looking for, and mankind needs it, and it's we all need it. But everything that I can look at it, we're increasing emissions rather than reducing them, and we're calling it green energy, which is sad, Paddy.
Well, it's the downstream issue where the reduction in emissions would take place. You're right. It will produce emissions where we try to construct and to erect the wind turbines themselves. It'll certainly be associated with any of the transportation costs, but the emission question is at the end use. So the downstream effect, same thing when we talk about oil. Ours has a lower carbon footprint, but of course we have to include the downstream in the overall emissions tally. That's where they say, green, but there's no such thing as purely green. It's greener than something else. I think we're going to get caught up with that label. Mike, I appreciate the time. I'm late for the news. Anything else quickly before I have to go?
Yeah, and I would like for him to come on, and because this is a 20-year project, 25-year project, so the emissions that we're going to put out, and then it's the towers become obsolete and this and that, and the life of the project is over. So and the Liberal government, and I'm being totally honest, the Liberal government can come on and say, for what we're going to do, another $1 billion worth of diesel generation, keep Holyrood online for a 25-year project, and say that we're going to reduce emissions. I would love for somebody to come on and explain how that's going to work.
I don't think there's a political party that's in opposition to these proposals, to be honest with you. If they are, they certainly haven't said it. Mike, I am late, but I appreciate the time. Thanks for the call this morning.
More at Marystown. Thank you, Paddy.
You got it. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break for the 11:30 news. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the Auditor General's report. Which one? We'll find out. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Well, just in reference to our previous caller prior to the news, Mike talked about the rally tomorrow at the Marystown Mall. He also wants me to add that all media members are welcomed as well. Okay, let's roll. Line number 1. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
I'm calling in about the AG report. And I heard Pauline talking about it a couple of days ago. He's absolutely right in what he was saying about there's no accountability. And before anything gets put in place, changes are made. And the privacy laws. See, the privacy laws takes away parental rights. And
sorry, what does that have to do with the Auditor General?
I'm just saying, overall, things are not like there will be like recommendations made by the government or by inquiries, and these recommendations never get implemented, or it takes 3 to 4 years before some of them. They might implement some, but they don't implement them all, the recommendations. And this is where the problem lies, because like nothing gets completely fixed or improved or acted upon. And that's where the problem lies. Like with a lot in Newfoundland, I find they'll do inquiries, recommendations will be made, and we get privacy laws where we can't, where parents can't have parental rights. It's been taken away from them regarding, like, I don't know, their children, what's right for their children's mental health. Social workers are not held accountable. Police are not held accountable. And it's just not right. Like, you got youth, they're suffering mental health. They can't get health care. They're put in situations where the mental health is not diagnosed properly. And they're just put into, they're enabled. The youth are enabled and given housing, unsafe housing. They're not being looked after. Their medical needs with diagnosis is not being looked after. It's just in and out the door, in and out a revolving door. And a lot of the youth are suffering from trauma. Some are suffering from mental health. Some are ending up in the justice system when, in fact, they need mental health help. And then they get involved in a drug situation because they don't feel well. It's a list, like it's down a rabbit hole is what it is, actually. And no one's held accountable. No one's held accountable for these. Like, not all social workers are bad, but there are a lot of bad social workers that are not helping our youth and protecting our youth, because as we see in the child advocate reports, I don't understand why government don't give the advocate subpoena power so there can be some oversight in the department. It's setting children up for failure. Make no wonder we got so many youth who are institutionalized.
I'm not sure of any of the specifics about what you're referring to regarding accountability and what happened and who we're talking about. And again, I'm a little confused what the Auditor General's role is in this particular conversation, but so be it.
Well, I mean, Patty, I'm saying that if this with the Auditor General, like there's things that haven't been implemented and changes made that should be made to make it better for the people of the province, and it's not being done. So somebody's dragging their feet. It's not being done. So what's the point of having inquiries or anything like that if we're not going to implement and make change?
I understand that summary point. I mean, whether it be the Child and Youth Advocate or the Seniors Advocate or the Auditor General or the Privacy Commissioner, up and down the line, it's one thing to do reports, quite another for them to see some sort of actual implementation. That much we can agree on for sure. Regardless, we don't even have to be specific there because that's been long a concern. Anything else before I have to take my final break of the morning, caller?
I mean, I just don't understand. Like, there's been so many youth that have died, so many that are drug addicted right now in the province. We're in a crisis. Okay? And it's sad to see because there's many reasons why people turn to drugs and alcohol and addiction. And then a lot of it stems from the Child, Youth and Family Services, and that one of the directors is head over the child death review. Why is that?
I don't know.
Why? And over the Law Society. So is this why people are not able to get legal aid? Families not able to get legal aid? And there's children that have died while that director was acting director of Child, Youth and Family Services, and now she's on the child death review. Like, isn't that a conflict of interest?
No, I think you'd probably need someone with lived and professional experience to be, having their input heard, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent. So I don't think that's a baked-in conflict. I appreciate your call this morning. I do have to get to the break, but thanks for the time.
I don't think that a director where there's been so many child deaths and abuses should be in control of a child death review report. I do not believe that should be.
Okay.
Because there's a bias there.
I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, final break of the morning. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Daryl, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Paddy. How you doing today?
Grand. How about you?
Oh, doing good. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me on your show there. Paddy, what I want to talk about today is, interest rates and inflation. And, I'm putting a lot of thought to this, and I'm glad to see now interest rates are starting to go the other direction, which is good for everybody in general. And I think might be predicting the next 8 times they're going to start going 0.25%. Well, we'll see what happens on a monthly basis. But what surprised me with all this, when they base everything on inflation, now they're saying 2.6, they base it on primarily fuel and groceries.
Well, no, the 2 major contributing factors are energy and housing. Yeah.
Well, it's energy and housing, and then fuel and groceries and so forth, a number of factors, right? So, yes, you're right what you're saying there. But every time I'm going to the grocery store now, for example, the prices are still going up. Because I keep track of things, what I buy, and then I noticed last time I went to the grocery store, certain items has gone up and up. So, but my point is, like they're getting their figures from, I guess, Stats Canada, but it don't add up in my books because they based on, like you said, energy and housing, number of factors, so forth. But groceries is still going up. Fuel is down, but it's still up in one regard. But it just don't add up, and this is my take on it. If we do go down the next 8 more meetings or whatever, we'll see what happens. Then you're into election time. So in my opinion, I think they're starting to lower it now, which I think they should have lowered it way before, because they're doing it the old school way, which don't work anymore. So I think time it gets down is going to be election time, and I think, to me, it's all coincidental. And I think when it gets down to a point, the feds are going to have to call election, I think, by October 2025. And that's my take on it. That's my view.
Food inflation, they kind of separated out from the overall general inflation, of which there's a variety of measures. Right. It's demand side, supply side, cost push, interest rates, rising wages, supply chain. I mean, there's a lot of contributing factors. Food inflation inflation is not down. General inflation is down, but food inflation still, they say the issue is not that prices have come down, but they're going up slower than they were in the past, which is no real cold comfort. So the food inflation number was about 1.3% in April versus March. So it's still quite stubborn, and food prices are going to be hard pressed to come back to earth anytime soon, considering the fact that I'm paying the same or more for less volume, which is that, as they call shrinkflation, which drives me absolutely around the bend. So I don't know. I mean, we can only hope that the Bank of Canada has strict independence from the government, and most things lead me to believe that it does, because it was certainly not in the federal Liberals' best interest to see interest rates as high as they were for as long as they were. So that kind of hurt them. And I mean, remember, the Prime Minister silliness said that he doesn't spend much time talking about monetary policy, which has come back to bite him. Thinking and talk about fiscal policy. I guess that hair split is that monetary policy really is in the hands of the central bank. Fiscal policy is in the hands of the government. But one has to be directly related to the other to make any sense. So there's a lot to the inflation conversation. Anything else you want to say about it before we have to go, Darryl?
You're right what you're saying, and the finance minister do communicate with the Bank of Canada, and they collaborate and share their information or what's going to translate. But I still believe it's, to me, is all coincidental, and I think the timing now, yes, it did hurt them, yes, but leaving them up for so long, I do agree with that. But I think what's happening now, that they're going to start lowering and lowering right up to the next federal election, and hoping that people will just forget, and they'll say, oh, well, great, interest rates are down low again, and, but that's my outlook on it. I've been sizing things up, and the way they're dealing with things, like so they're not focused on monetary issues, which is the most important thing in this country right now. So, monetary policy is not fiscal policy. Just imagine if politicians were in full involved in adjusting interest rates. What a nightmare that would be. How stupid would that be? Same thing as politicians in control of the price of gas. Okay, so here comes the election, all of a sudden gas is 50 cents cheaper. Here comes the election, all of a sudden interest rates for 60 days are going to be 2.5% versus 5%. We would be shooting ourselves in the proverbial foot to allow politicians anywhere close to those things. Oh, I totally agree. That would be a total disaster, the monetary wise, but the fiscal wise, they're still not focusing on the right things to get things going in the right direction. To me, they're just way off course, and it's sad. And I just hope the bomb don't fall out of it. That's all I hope for.
I appreciate the time. Thanks, Darryl.
Okay, thanks for your time, Patty, and all the best to you and your listening audience and staff at the OCM.
Same to you. Thank you.
All right, take care. Thanks.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, waiting for the cue from Dave where I'm going next. Okay, well, I go to line number 3. Fair enough. Gerard, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi.
How you doing, Paddy?
Doing grand this morning. How about you?
Yes, I'm calling in about a news story VOCM had on there about 2 weeks ago about a young gentleman, a principal down in Grey River. John Lamori and his wife, they're two local people from here in Ferryland. And they're after doing amazing stuff for the people in Grey River. They got about 15 students there. And they never see the likes of it, the playground that he's after getting for it, and sports and everything. But now he got some federal money, I think, for 2 new greenhouses in Grey River to grow all their own root vegetables for the local people in the community: cabbage, turnip, carrot, greens, strawberries, tomatoes, year round. And the young man is after doing amazing stuff for that place since he went there 4 years ago. And he's the son of Peter and Joe Morey from Ferryland. And what he's after, his wife is a school teacher there, and he's the principal. And it's just amazing what the young man is after doing. And they interviewed him. What a speaker! What a young man to talk, And the potential there for these rural areas, because I'm certain sure all them coastal communities is watching what he's doing, and survival actually, because they're not used to fresh vegetables, and they'll be picked and sold and give to the people. Apparently, what he said on VOCM News, they interviewed him, and it's just amazing the stuff that he's after doing for the community.
Yeah, two big leaps forward. Yes, there was some federal monies involved, and the two greenhouse, I believe at least one of them is hydroponic greenhouse.
Yes, they are hydroponic, and they're going to grow strawberries year-round, tomatoes, kale, cabbage, turnip, potato, carrot. And I mean, Paddy, he was a school teacher in BC, lived there with his mother and father, and he's just an amazing young fella. What an agriculture minister he'll make, and what a premier he will make down the road for Newfoundland and Labrador, because he has some head on his shoulders, I tell you that. And also the school board, I think, is amazed with him, what he's after doing for the community. But the day that he leaves, that's the day, they're going to certainly miss him. I tell you that.
Yeah, I was impressed. I heard him speak with Christy, I'm pretty sure it was.
Right. Johnson, yes, he came from a wonderful family, and he takes after his grandfather, William Morey, Bill Morey, was well known to VOCM, well known to Bill Rowe, and was a very active fish member for Spain, Portugal. Put up nothing but the best salt fish in the world. He did.
Gerard, you've had the last word. We're right up against it, but I appreciate you making time, and I'm sure Mr. Morey's happy.
Take care. Thank you very much,
You too. All the best.
Okay, buddy.
All right, bye-bye. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.